Welcome to today's episode where we explore the transformative journey of healing after divorce with our guest, Jody Bruns. There we go. As the president and founder of the Divorce Lending Association and a pioneer in divorce mortgage planning, Jody has over 35 years of experience in finance and real estate. She has trained nearly 10,000 professionals, empowering them to navigate the complexities of divorce with clarity and strategy. Jody's personal experience with divorce inspired her mission to help families transition through difficult times. She is also the author of A House Divided and Anchored in Faith, providing valuable insights for those facing heartbreak and change. Join us as we delve into Jody's innovative work and profound impact that she has on divorce recovery. Welcome, Jody. I just want to tell about this. She is a fellow Coloradian, once a Coloradian, always a Coloradian.
Welcome to the Divorce Devil Podcast, a show tailor-made for those stepping out of the divorce recovery space. Follow your hosts, David and Rachel, as they dive into the all-too-familiar shitstorm of the more than interesting end-of-the-road divorce topics, stories, and discussions. While realizing it can be a trying stage, they have been where you are and understand the struggle. And yes, the struggle is real. They know that recovery can be such a clusterfuck. Check out the podcast if you feel like you're juggling chainsaws, then strap in and hold on for some honesty, authenticity, and hard-in-your-face, irrefutable truths. This innovative podcast is not for the faint-hearted, so if you can't handle the certain truths, just keep it moving. If you can, welcome to the show.
There you go.
Yep. But tell us about yourself, Jody.
Yeah, so as he just said, I'm from Colorado, but originally Illinois, now down in South Alabama. And I had my own experience with divorce, and that has really led my passion to be the innovator and help others recovering from divorce in matters that surround the house. So I'm a huge sports fan. We won't talk about that because we have competing teams. I have 5 amazing children, and I have my 12th grandchild on the way.
Dang. I don't have any, man. I'm so mad. Anyway.
I may have some to spare by the time they're all done.
So your personal divorce experience inspired your mission, of course. What was the pivotal moment when you realized that the system was broken and needed to be either changed or fixed with divorce and mortgages?
When we were going through our divorce, obviously we had a house, we had a mortgage, and what really opened my eyes was all the moving parts, the different professionals in there. The attorneys, they didn't understand anything about mortgages, but yet they wanted to write up the settlement agreement as to who was supposed to do what. You have financial advisors involved who think they know how to do mortgages, but they really don't. And it was just a complete disconnect all the way around. And so I was running Mount Falcon. I don't know if you're familiar with Mount Falcon over in the foothills up by Denver, but I was running one morning and all of a sudden it clicked that I need to go back and pull all my previous divorce files I had worked with. And I continue to see this disconnect in all of it. And so I started studying family law. I started studying finance and tax planning as it all surrounded the house and other real estate, and then how it implicated the mortgage. And so that's where I truly developed this specialty around divorce mortgage planning. And then years later, I was in Chicago working, and I had a family law firm ask me if I would take on the task of writing a national certification for the mortgage industry. I did. And now we have upwards of almost 800 certified divorce planning professionals nationwide.
Wow. So what were some of the disconnects? Can you explain those?
The disconnect is, here's a very good example. What may be available as a legal option may not be available as a mortgage option. For example, let's say the husband is keeping the house and he's supposed to refinance, but at the same time, he is supposed to also pay the wife's attorney fees out of refinancing the mortgage. Sounds simple.
Okay. Yep.
And the problem is, and let's say also he's supposed to pay her share of equity in the mortgage or in the house. So he's supposed to refinance the current mortgage into his name, take out whatever equity share she's awarded, and pay, let's say, $20,000 in attorney's fees. While that's legally viable, it's a solution. How they
Okay.
write it up in the settlement agreement actually affects his ability to get a mortgage because he can't access the equity that's needed in the house because of the way it was written.
Written. Okay.
And so we work with the family law side of it, saying, okay, this is how it needs to be structured so that he can access the equity in the home. That's just one example, but support payments, support received, a lot of it is, it's all in how it's written up in the settlement agreement may determine whether you can or cannot get a mortgage.
Man. Wow, that's interesting. What are some of the most common mistakes people make whether deciding whether to keep or sell the family home during a divorce?
Emotions. You'll hear family law professionals and mortgage professionals say, look at it as a business transaction. It's an asset. Let's just look at it from a numbers perspective. And having been there and then having worked with so many divorcing clients, you have to be able to be empathetic to them. You have to understand the emotions that are tied to the house. And it's not as simple as just giving it up or moving out or I have to keep this house. I'll give you an example. When I was in the Denver market, I worked, and I tell this story quite often, but it's a very impactful one. I was working with a mom who was adamant she was not giving up the home. And she had two boys who played competitive baseball, which is huge out in Colorado. I had two of them myself. And she said that the boys' lives have changed enough. I'm not moving them to a house. So she could qualify for the mortgage, but by the skin of her teeth. She was going to be house poor, as we call it. And I had a conversation with her, just mom to mom. And I said, I have two boys that play competitive travel ball. And are you going to be okay telling them, I'm sorry, honey, we can't go to Steamboat Springs for the tournament this weekend because I have to make the mortgage payment? Or do you reset and say, okay, let's sell the house, let's downsize to something that's more comfortable so that we can continue to live our lives?
Mhm.
And that is one of the things, is separating that. And I just think so many people, whether it's the man or the woman, the emotional tie to the house is there, but being realistic about what you can and cannot handle is important.
Yeah, that is so tough. It's almost always tell people you never stay for the kids, and it's almost you never keep the house for the kids.
Yeah.
Unless you can afford it.
Yes, exactly.
So divorce often feels like a loss, but you emphasize strategy. What's an example of a winning real estate decision you've seen transform someone's post-divorce life?
I have a lot of those. I would say it's being realistic. Going back to that, the baseball mom, she sold the house, fortunately. Think that so many people, they know that divorce is change and they know that they are giving up something. A lot of times they think that it's just the marriage that they're giving up, but they're giving up friends, they're giving up family. Half of their family comes from the other side. And I think that I have seen people think, and I know I use these examples all the time, but there was one couple and it was the husband who was actually keeping the home and the wife and kids moved to a smaller house. But what he found staying in their small cul-de-sac was that the local neighbor friends that they had as a couple were no longer friends. He
Right.
ended up selling and moving. So I think people really need to take into account change. It's not just the marriage. It's not just who keeps or leaves the house. There's so much that surrounds it. And I don't know if I really directly answered your question or
No, you
not,
did. You
but
did. You did. Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one too. Building an entirely new profession is no small feat. What unexpected challenges did you face when pioneering the field of divorce mortgage planning?
it was really a disruptor to how things progress in the divorce world. For example, attorneys weren't used to having a mortgage professional sit at the settlement table.
So resistant to change.
Yeah. The thing is, they don't know what they don't know.
Yep.
And so it was really, we spent probably the first 5 years really building awareness and explaining the value that a certified divorce lending professional has at the table and what changes we can impact to make sure
Mhm.
there are less, not none, but less post-divorce conflict. And that was probably our biggest challenge, was really explaining this is a mortgage lender can have an effect on the language used in the settlement agreement, because that's, like I said earlier, that language can affect the ability to qualify for a mortgage. Instead of traditionally do the divorce, you determine who gets the house, what they have to do, refinance or whatever, and then
Mhm.
go to a mortgage professional after the fact and have them put the settlement into it's almost like taking a square divorce settlement and putting it into a circle to get qualified for a mortgage. So that was our biggest pushback, if you will. The other pushback we got was from lenders in the mortgage business themselves. They thought, I can read underwriting guidelines, so why do I need a certification? And it's because they have tunnel vision. They think all I have to do is understand the mortgage, but it's not. If you truly want to be impactful, you have to understand the family law aspect. You have to use financial planning and tax codes sometimes to create income. So it's been a challenge, but we're in our 15th year now and we are
Wow.
singing strong here.
So it's almost like they go side by side. It's almost like the chicken and the egg.
Yeah.
Which one? We know which came first, but now they're like equal.
Yep.
And just a pushback is just trying to get the equality between the two factions.
Yep.
Wow, the Hatfields and McCoys. How has your personal faith shaped your approach to helping others navigate divorce?
My personal faith, it's an interesting story. So growing up, we were always at church. We went to Sunday school, but I always grew up keeping my faith quiet to
Mhm.
myself. And I was at a baseball game and I was sitting there waiting for my ex-husband to bring the kids. And I had picked up this book. It was called The Power of a Positive Woman. And it was really, it all is faith-based. And it really made me realize that I was turning more and more back, having a more loud conversation with God sometimes. And it just really brought me back up from this dark place where you just felt so alone when you didn't know how to handle these changes and the just the different family dynamic now. And so I really dug down, really embraced that, and he helped me through it. And so I think that it's been almost my calling to have that approach now and help others, whether it's men or whether it's the women going through divorce. If they are connected to God, they will find that inner strength and really come through in a much better place.
So you wear a ton of hats, man.
A lot of hats.
I'm surprised your head doesn't hang low. But how do you know when to turn one? Did it take a while for you to learn how to turn one hat on and one off, or maybe have two hats at once? How did you navigate that?
Did I not mention I raised 5 children?
Boy, there you go. Yeah, how do you manage those hats? There's so many hats.
You take a deep breath and you listen. So many times I think people are in such a hurry to give advice, and be more black and white as to this is the way you qualify for a mortgage, or this is the income you have, etc. And when you can sit and you can understand, number one, where they're coming from, and if you just stop and you just listen sometimes, then they feel heard, which I think is huge, especially with going through a divorce, but they feel heard. And that allows you to then respond more to their actual needs. Instead, if somebody says, I have to keep the house, and you're like, okay, let's see what we can do about that. It's no, why do you feel you have to keep the house? When you open just a door, I was talking to a couple divorcing clients a month or so ago, and I was talking to one spouse, and she said, I just want to move on because her spouse was keeping the house. And I just want to move on. And the other spouse could not refinance for a couple years because of, she's self-employed, newly, whatever. And I heard her say this, I just want to move on. And she felt that being tied to the mortgage for 2 more years was going to prohibit her from moving on. And so when I paused and I heard her say that, I was in a position then to say, but you are moving on. And you're right. So sometimes I think just literally listening to people lets you figure out which hat to put on. And sometimes you're wearing 2 at a time.
Yep. Yep. What's one myth about divorce and real estate that you wish people would stop believing? There's got to be a couple.
There's a couple. The biggest one is that just because you're awarded the house doesn't mean you can keep it. And by that, a lot of people assume that we got a mortgage before, so I can get it again. Divorce changes things.
Yep.
And it changes if this income counts, if this income doesn't. A lot of spouses, the cash flow is what they see as income. I'm getting this support income. I'm getting child support. I'm getting a $200,000 maintenance buyout. Okay, you have the cash to afford a mortgage. That doesn't mean you can get a mortgage. And I think that's the biggest myth, is that I got the house, so refinance me. I got the house, so I can afford to keep it. And it's not the same. You cannot assume anything post-divorce.
No kidding. So you've trained nearly 10,000 professionals. What's the one piece of advice you always give them when dealing with divorcing clients?
With the clients or the professionals?
The professionals.
The one piece of advice is what I believe I said it earlier, is that what may be available as a legal option is not always available as a mortgage option. And that attorneys are not mortgage professionals, tax accountants are not family law professionals. And they need to understand that it takes a village, if you will, to coin that term. It takes a group of people to really work together to achieve a solution that is best for both spouses, not just one. I like taking a neutral approach. I don't like being an advocate for one party over the other, because having gone through divorce, I realized that there are 2 people in every divorce. And my divorce did not end well. My ex-husband still does not speak to me. And that was hard. It still is hard on our adult children, let alone when they were a lot younger.
Wow. So you work with attorneys, mediators, financial professionals. What's the biggest gap in their understanding of real estate? Because everybody has their niche. What is the niche gap that they don't understand, that they don't get?
Cash flow is not income, is one. Another one. The value of the house is another. There's different opinions of value. That's another gap. The tax liability, that is going to rest on one spouse's shoulder if they retain the house, especially in the Colorado market with appreciation and values going up. There's going to be a tax implication in the future when they sell the house. And even within the law industry, family law attorneys, they specialize in divorce. They don't know real estate law. In Colorado, for example, The increase in value of separate property is considered marital property. So if you owned a home pre-marriage and let's say it increased in value by $200,000 during the course of the marriage, that $200,000 is marital property. To give you an example specific to Colorado again, as to the difference in the gap, even between family law and real estate law, is joint tenancy, typical way of holding title, defaults to tenancy in common with no right of survivorship once that divorce entry or order goes into effect in Colorado. So you may have spouses that think, okay, we're going to hold the house for 5 years until the kids are out of school, for example, and then we'll sell it. And they think we own the home, we're joint tenancy, we're both protected. What happens if one spouse dies? They think that the other spouse automatically gets ownership of the house. They get 50%. The other 50% will go through probate. So there are a lot of what ifs can happen, and each state has its own specific legalities surrounding real estate and divorce law that we cannot ignore as professionals. But that's another gap just on the family law side of not understanding real estate law in the state of Colorado.
Wow. How has technology helped or hurt your profession?
That's profession? I think it's helped a lot with information sharing, but then it's also hurt a lot with information sharing. And that's like a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Google said I can keep the house. Google said I can do a loan assumption. And we hear that a lot. It's the age of misinformation as much as it is the age of information. And people read what they want. And I'll even tell you AI. We mess around with Chat GTP every once in a while, and I'll ask it a question and it'll come back and say something I know is completely wrong. And so I'll challenge it and I'll say, that's wrong. And it'll say, oh, here's a revised answer. And I'm like, that's still wrong. And then the other thing on age of information, I'll share this. I'm in a lot of Facebook groups that are divorce support groups. The amount of misinformation in those things. So if you have any listeners who are part of a divorce support group, men or women, it's just remember the people in that group are not professionals. They are other people going through a divorce, and they are disgruntled. They are angry. They're resentful, and they are telling you to do things based off of their experience, not what should be done. And that's an information overload there, but
yeah, I can see you're passionate about that.
Yeah. Oh man, I have to shut it off sometimes because I just can't sometimes. I'm like, I can't deal with you people.
What is the most surprising way someone has used your divorce mortgage planning expertise to transform their post-divorce life? How did someone do an Ocean's 11 out there?
What I really like to see is when somebody works with me or another one of our members and they completely embrace the divorce mortgage planning part of it. They go into their divorce settlement much more informed, much more prepared. And I think that when they are more prepared and they know the answers, they know what has to happen, if you will, in order for them to keep the home, or if they're selling the marital home and both spouses are more prepared and expectations are set correctly around what it's going to take from both of them to make a mortgage happen, there's less conflict and they do truly move on in a much more positive way with each other.
Wow. So what are the 3 things you want to impart to the listeners? 1, 2, 3.
Listen to me. Don't assume that the mortgage process is going to be the same as it was while you were married. It definitely changes. Reach out to a local certified divorce planning professional. I know we have some in not only the Denver area, but in Colorado Springs as well. get informed. It is the best ammunition. It's the best advice I can give anybody is to be prepared and be informed, because the more you are in advance, believe it or not, it'll save you in legal fees.
Yep. And not just Google.
Not Google, right?
Is that 3 or is it 2?
Oh, I don't know.
That's 2.
What's another one?
Floss every night.
There you go. Floss every night from the dentist. I love it.
Oh, man. All right, Judy. That was awesome. Man, we'll have to revisit this because I got a few more questions, but my men, they're quick on their podcast.
Yeah.
The guys out there, how to find you on the internet.
Absolutely. You can find me at divorcelendingassociation.com.
Okay. And we'll have that connection on the show notes, but we appreciate Judy taking the time to hang out with us.